it is real easy to fully give yourself over to the hype train. And I was doing that in my head, and I started thinking, okay, well, where do I think this team would maybe be held back, right? Because I don't think it's defensively. Like, the D-line is going to be elite. Mike Jones Jr. feels like that linebacking core is going to be great. Secondary, obviously, corner still, well, it's still a bit of an unknown. With Sevyn Banks and Bernard Converse, like, you should be probably better than we think right now. To me, Jake, the biggest thing is not even going to be quarterback. It's going to be the guys who try to set up the quarterback for success. It's got to be the offensive line. Like, the group that will most, in my opinion, the group that will most determine the ceiling of this team will be that LSU offensive line. It's a big year for Brad Davis, the sole staff member kept through this transition.
It's going to be not only the first five out there, T, but who's going to be behind them. In the last couple of years, we have seen LSU's offensive line just get decimated with injuries.
Yeah.
And they have not had the bodies that were ready to go in there and be able to be players in the SEC. Now, you can also say, okay, with that being said, there was guys playing last year that aren't going to be starters this year that had to start a bulk of the season last year.
Yeah.
And that experience, like, you hope that can help them if they were called upon. You're going to be playing
good reps. You had Xavier Hill, Marlon Martinez. Obviously, Charles Turner started playing a lot of football all over the place. So, yes, you finally started to break in these young guys that have been much maligned over the last couple of years.
So you get Tremont Shorts, right? You get a transfer in. You get Frazier in as a transfer. You're going to be playing Charles Turner at his more natural position, center and not tackle. You have a true freshman at Will Campbell who might leave here one of the best to ever do it at left tackle, but still a true freshman. So you got a couple transfers. You got a true freshman. You got someone who started as a tight end, moved back to center, moves out to tackle, now moved back to center in Charles Turner. Right tackle in Cam Wire, who currently would be slated to start there, has the most experience, certainly in purple and gold.
Yeah.
So it's an offensive line that's got a lot of moving parts. It's got parts that have been successful other places. It's got a question mark at center just because you haven't seen Charles Turner do it in a couple of years. But I will say, when I had Brian Kelly on with me a couple of weeks ago, I asked him the question, kind of give me a couple of guys from the team that were already here that you can kind of trust on. And he mentioned Mike Jones Jr. and Charles Turner, the guys up the middle. So those were two guys that he kind of mentioned. So it's a pretty good endorsement as far as where he's at right now.
Yeah, it's a big year for Turner. Like, if we want to zoom in even closer than zooming in on the offensive line, you zoom in on Turner, and you're right. It's weird that you could have a true freshman left tackle and be saying that the center is the biggest question mark, but that's how good we think Will Campbell could be, right? It's not to say Will Campbell won't get beat at times. He's going to have to go against Will Anderson and, all the other studs that this league has to offer. But like Jake said, he is tracking as someone who could be legendary by the time this is all said and done. Like we said, he almost has the feel of the first true left tackle since Andrew Whitworth. So it's been a long time since LSU has had a body like that. Very appropriate, too, that he comes from the 318. Whit from Monroe, from West Monroe, obviously, and then Will Campbell coming down from Neville and asserting himself. I love it. Both of our football teams come fall time are going to be working in new beast left tackles, right? That picture of Trevor Penning, which I don't think we got to yesterday. We should have. But the picture you put in the document, Trevor Penning looks like a monster. Will Campbell looks like a monster, but just like a little young monster that just went through puberty. Like one that's going to continue to only grow fangs and horns and muscles as time goes on over the next couple of years. So I'm getting pretty excited. Maybe it's a bit of the Friday mood taking me over, but I feel like Mike Jones did a great job of setting the tone for my LSU football excitement. And again, I would slam the over on the win total. Is it still 6.5 or is it up to 7.5 now?
I've seen it at 6.5 and I've seen it at 7.5. So it depends on what book you're looking at.
Either way, I like it at both. I think 8-4 is kind of the bare minimum for this team. It's obviously what they need to do if people are going to be happy. I would say it's a bare minimum. But I think from a talent standpoint, I think 8-4 feels like how this thing will play out at its base. And then maybe you even push one across and get to 9 wins. Hammer that over today. No more putting it off. DraftKings.
So one of the things that's a big question mark, I think, is because a lot of us, and I'm including myself in this, we have an old school mentality thought process about how much chemistry matters and having transfers come in and what they can do and how hard is that to create that chemistry. Do you do it organically? Is it a forced thing? Like, how does that happen? But I think now in this day and age of college football and college athletics, that's just gone. I don't think that matters as much. You can't look at the sample sizes in the last couple of years. Look at what Mel Tucker did. Mel Tucker at Michigan State was a bad football team 2 years ago. Mel Tucker crushes the transfer portal. A bulk of his team came from the portal.
15 players, including 7 starters.
And Kenneth Walker III, the best player on your team.
Yeah. And your quarterback. The quarterback transfer did not win the job, but he pushed Thorne for the job, and Thorne ended up playing really well.
So you go from a bad football team to a New Year's Six bowl game football team.
Yeah.
And we've seen so many cases of teams that have done it that way and actually been pretty successful. I just don't know that it matters any much as far as that aspect of it. Like, hey, can these guys come in and can they work together? It's like that's no longer an issue.
No, you raise a great point because the players are more used to it now than ever. So it's not like back in the day, getting a transfer was a much bigger deal. Both in terms of like when a guy would leave, you'd be pretty salty at that guy. And when a guy would come in, sometimes it would be a little like they'd have to kind of earn their way into the club a little bit. I think in this new era of college football, these players don't operate with those same kind of mental barriers in place. I also think ultimately, when you're replacing this much and you're completely reworking the culture, it can be an advantage because it's complete overhaul, but it does come down to the leadership in place. And I think that's where you're seeing the meticulous nature of Brian Kelly and his planning really, it's really being highlighted here. And it's one of the reasons why I feel confident they can manage so much new is because of the culture and the systems that Brian Kelly has been perfecting for his entire adult life, right? That's what I keep going back to. Yes, he's 60 years old, but in college football now, that can be young, right? And so really what you're getting is a man at his mental prime who has refined these processes for decades now. And like Mike Jones said, won on every single level. And so, yes, there is a ton of new, and that could go awry. But with the stable leadership of Kelly, I think it's going to pay huge dividends. Like I said, I mean, it's so funny that we randomly got obsessed with Mel Tucker during last football season, not realizing that he had actually laid out the exact blueprint for just how good things can be and like how quickly things can turn around.
And you can do it now so fast. You can turn a season that was very disappointing for LSU last 2 seasons, and you can have 39 scholarship players when you end your season, and now you have the ability because you got those 7 extra spots this year, so you can really sign a full high school class, and you can supplement your roster with transfers, which is certainly something they did. Was it 16 transfers LSU has on this current roster?
Yes, it's 16 or 17. It's like somewhere around there. It's a big number.
I mean, you had to completely revamp your roster, and you go get 2 starters from Arkansas. You go get an all-conference player from Oklahoma State. You go get the highly sought-out transfer tackle from Florida International and Frazier. So, like, you went and got some Jimmies and Joes to put with what you had left over from, the regime that was before you. And also you're going to add some high school players. Like Will Campbell's already here. You can do it now. Like normally, like if you got to a point where LSU was the last couple of years, it's like a 5-year process to try to fight your way back. But now it can, not overnight, but overnight.
Yeah. In the context of what college football always has been, make no mistake, it is overnight.
Yeah.
Right? Like, not literally, but in what college football has been to what it is now, yes, you can remake a program and a team overnight. And honestly, that's why the bar for Kelly is going to be as high as it is in year one in terms of fan expectation, because we've seen that, and you're now expecting that from the winningest active coach in college football.